Welcome to Men Making a Difference, PGSAO men who inspire and motivate.
Well, hello, my bigs. How are you today?
I'm fine, Madam Staten. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. You know,
Thank you.
no problem. Oftentimes our community gets to hear from me as the elected state's attorney, but you're also working hard for our residents every single day. So why don't you tell everyone about your role in the office and a little bit about yourself?
I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll go into my role in the office. I've been a practicing attorney. I graduated from law school in 1986. I've been practicing since 1987. Started my career as a prosecutor, did 15 years as a prosecutor in Montgomery County. I did 18 years in private practice, and I've been with our office for about 19 months. In the office, I've got some mixed responsibilities. I've got 3 homicide cases I'm working in conjunction with folk in the office with, but primarily I'm assigned to grand jury right now. And what I'm doing in grand jury is we review cases in grand jury and we make decisions about indicting those cases. The office term for that is screening. Most of those cases come into the office, police officers present those cases to us. We make decisions about the manner in which those cases should be charged, and then they're assigned to other prosecutors. I did want to tell you one thing about that work, and particularly the thing that I found most intriguing about that work. I am seeing a lot of gun cases. I am seeing officers during the course of the year, hundreds of guns, and I'm seeing officers remove these guns. And I really want to speak to what I think is really remarkable about this. Most of these guns are loaded guns. Most of these guns have bullets in the chamber. Most of these guns are being handled by people who are very inexperienced. These young offenders, most of them are young. They have these guns and they don't know how to handle these guns. And in their hands, these instrumentalities are very dangerous. And you have these officers during the course of the year having hundreds of encounters with these young men. And what I find the most remarkable thing about it is the officers are able to arrest these young men. They're able to disarm these young men. They're able to bring cases to us. In well over 95% of the cases, no one's getting hurt. The offenders aren't getting hurt. The police aren't getting hurt. The guns are coming off the street. And I view those guns as being the most dangerous instrumentalities that could be in the hands of these young men. And we're in office, you're a public servant, and I'm a public servant as well, but you as the head public servant made it very clear. I remember being shocked when I went to the office one time when I saw a huge banner that said Black Lives Matter. I also believe very deeply that Black Lives Matter. And the thing that's remarkable about this is I think we hear a lot about police misconduct, and police misconduct is real. But and this is, in talking to the officers who do this work, I've established some relationships with these officers. These officers are a little frustrated. On the one hand, they do their jobs and they don't complain, but they do express concern that nobody really knows what they're doing, or, in my view, and I have to agree with them, how successful that they have been in these programs. And the thing is, the way I assess it, the removal of these guns from the hands of these young offenders takes a major step in ensuring the safety and well-being, not just of them, but of the people when they do get it, and they do get involved in gunfights. Yeah. The people that they're hurting the most are themselves, are people who look like them, are people who share the same culture, are people who are engaged in the same behaviors. And so what I find remarkable about that is the officers, in my view, in terms of one of the things that law enforcement can do in a positive way, is they're making a great contribution to demonstrating some commitment to our lives mattering, you know, and I'm impressed by that. And and again, and when I talk to them, they don't complain. You know, they're doing this good work. They wish more people were aware of it. I'm proud to be associated with it. In terms of one of the greatest law enforcement steps that can be taken to ensure the well-being of our citizenry, getting guns off the street, out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, is I think just among the best things a person can do.
Absolutely, and I want to explore that a little bit, because you're absolutely right. We do see a lot of gun cases. We do see a lot of cases where there are individuals who, you know, aren't necessarily actively using their weapon, but they have the weapon ready, right? Bullet in the trigger, and these are very young people for the most part. They're, you know, 18 through 25. Some are younger, some are, you know, juveniles. Others may be a little older, but a lot of times people age out of crime or very violent crime. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. So these types of offenses are generally, the defendants there are generally very, very young. And so one of the things that we're looking at, because gun offenses, even if it's where carry transport, something like that, which is typically what they end up getting charged with, the sentencing guidelines for those are typically probation to 6 months or probation to 18 months or something like that for a first offense. And so you're not talking about people who will either be in jail, or if they are in jail, they're not going to be there for a long period of time. And sometimes jail isn't really the answer, it is something else. And so we've been working really hard to expand some of our diversion options or intervention options, because people need to take responsibility for their actions, and there should be consequences. But I guess my question to you, having been a prosecutor for as long as you have been, and been in the legal profession for as long as you have been, representing those sometimes probably who were caught with weapons and other things, tell me, like, what other steps should an office like ours take to ensure that those individuals make better decisions? Because we can't arrest or even prosecute our way out of it, because oftentimes what we see are these individuals back in our communities committing similar or more serious offenses.
You make an interesting distinction, and actually the statute, there's the possession of prohibited weapons statute. You know, I've spent a lot of time with that statute lately, and it's a very interesting statute because of the different, you know, the gradations of prohibition. That, you know, we're primarily dealing. It's lettered 531, 533B, 533C, and 533D. B and D are misdemeanors. And the B misdemeanor is a more severe, carries a more severe penalty than the D misdemeanor. Well, you know, the B misdemeanor deals with instances where a person has committed an offense where it can be a felony or it can be a misdemeanor that's punishable by 2 years. The D charge deals exclusively with age, and when a person is under 21 and they have possession. And in our office, we're making I think what's a very meaningful distinction with those prohibition cases, because in those D cases, and I just heard in our grand jury meeting today, we've had another a permutation of how we're going to deal with them. Originally, it was thought that we would send them to district, the pure Ds would go to district court. And that's what had been going on for a while, because they're not getting null process, they're getting dropped in district court. There's concurrent jurisdiction in the circuit court and the district court. So they can be tried and convicted of those offenses. But I think the chief concern is we wanted to bring them up to circuit court. And so now we're taking the D offenses with the juveniles and we are moving them to circuit court. And my understanding is we're looking at diverting those cases that involve kids who don't have other serious offenses.
Yes, we're actually looking at expanding back on track, which is an intervention program. Now, those individuals will have to accept a plea, but at the end of the day, they can have their record expunged after successful completion of the program.
And I think look. We have so much. We have two types of. We have, I guess, two profound policy concerns that we have to try to balance at the same time. On the one hand, we have a straight public safety concern, and the third parties who might be impacted by the use of these guns. People can get wounded and people can get killed. On the one hand. On the other hand, you've got young kids, many of whom are not bad kids. And so you're dealing with a circumstance where you have to try, if they're retrievable, you got to take what measures you can to make sure that they have a chance at a law-abiding life, to make sure they have a chance to get a job. If you hit people with if you hit them with felonies and they're too young and they're applying for jobs, the likelihood that they're going to get work is almost nil. Same thing in terms of them applying for school and things of that nature. And a lot of times, you're right, people age out of certain offenses. I think what's good about, and some of this goes to the statutory structure, when you get around to that 5133C, you're looking at a circumstance where someone has, committed a violent offense. And I think there's a serious distinction between people who have committed violent offenses with handguns, or even without, for that matter, who are at this point beginning to carry a handgun, and those who do not. And so there should be a significant break. There should be a significant difference in the manner in which those people who are committed and have demonstrated their willingness to commit serious violent offenses against them. And I think that 5133C offense is very useful in that regard. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, as we look at our history as lawyers, as Black lawyers, and we look at those pioneers like Charles Hamilton Houston that impressed upon us really the value of being social engineers in our field as prosecutors and those who are serving our public, certainly, but we are administering justice and we are ministers of justice. We have to, think globally. We have to think differently. We have to continue to evolve as our community evolves, because we are unable to serve them fully if we don't understand where they are. If we're not in the community, if we're not listening, if we don't understand the people who we are serving, what their needs are, then we would be doing a disservice to the public. And so that's why we always have to look at how do we adjust what we're doing to meet our main goal, which is to keep our community safe, while also having a fair and just system that gives people meaningful opportunities to rehabilitate, to be a contributing member of our society. And I'm so happy to have someone like you in the office who also understands that, and who,
Thank you.
From your vantage point, when you're looking at these cases around our gun crimes and other serious offenses, I'm looking at it not just to say, okay, well, here's how much time we can get for this individual, but looking at what else should we be doing? What other needs does this individual have? How do we ensure that this person does not commit that offense again? And when we look at it from that perspective, then sometimes, yes, sometimes a period of incarceration is going to be required, or that may be the appropriate response. But in other situations, we may be looking at other options. So I know that you are now aware of some of our expansion plans for our Back on Track program
Yes.
to assist some of those young people, and they are very, very young, who need intervention. Because if we don't give it to them now, then we may likely see them again, and then we'll see them at a point where it's going to be very difficult to fashion any type of outcome that's going to be favorable in any way to them. And we want to be balanced, right, in our approach, always taking our victim into account, our community into account, but also the defendant into consideration as well.
Well, most of these young men, they are our future. I mean, it's just a dearth of young Black men who are going to school. I've been in Maryland for around 34 years. And I was speaking to a colleague who I worked with in Montgomery County during that first stint. And we were talking about just governmental impacts on our folk. And I told him, I mean, the thing that hurts me, the thing I see that hasn't changed that much, and he confirmed for me it's the same thing in Montgomery County. African-American kids, African-American boys. If you want to look and see where they're at academically, they're generally at the bottom in terms of academic accomplishments. And they are still the predominant population, them and Latin boys, in the detention centers. That circumstance hasn't changed significantly in 35 years. And there are things I think from a societal standpoint that we can do overall that haven't been employed. But I think programs like Back on Track are helpful in addressing issues like that. And I'm committed to seeing us to working with young men in a manner that keeps them from getting locked up. On the one hand. On the other hand, distinguishing those who are truly dangerous, who are hurting each other, who are hurting those, who hurt people who are exactly like them. It's a strange demographic where you have all this injury taking place, where the victims so closely match the perpetrators. I mean, it's, they're eating their own. They're eating our own.
And what we also learn is that, a lot of, today's, defendants are yesterday's victims. And so sometimes what we have to look at is making sure that when people are victims, that they are truly taken care of, because they can build up anger, resentment,
absolutely,
and trauma that will affect their behavior. And so, we're not going to be able to answer all the questions, right? And we don't have all the resources in the state's attorney's office to address these issues. However, we, because we see it all, we're in a great position to advise our government partners and our nonprofit partners of what the needs are in our community, because we see the worst of it when they come into our offices or across our desks, but we're seeing a symptom of a larger problem. And so being a part, and that's why I think I take this role so seriously, and not just, obviously prosecuting cases, but also being a part of that policy making body, going to the legislature, talking to the county executive and our council about what we see as needs in our community, because we will see the worst of the worst. If there's something wrong that's going on in our community, we will know what it is, because it will come into our office. And so it's great to have people like you who also understand that. So I really thank you for that level of insight that you bring. Now, I know we don't have much time left, but are there any parting words? Is there anything that you want to share with maybe an aspiring, hopefully future prosecutor, or someone who's thinking about going into the legal profession?
If I might just share one story, and this is this goes back to probably the thing I found most professionally rewarding when I was in Montgomery County. We had a very special thing happen. I think because we had a coalescence of interest on the part of a certain community, of the police department, and we had a really special officer who was running an intervention unit, and our state's attorney. I gotta give you, and you've met Mr. Simon before. I gotta give him credit because he assigned myself and another prosecutor, Mr. Sims, to a community that was really suffering, that had a very serious drug problem, and there was lots of open air drug markets in this community, scattered all over this very concentrated African American community. But the citizens of that community, it was an old community, just wouldn't quit. And they had a very active and engaged civic association. And this civic association, they appointed a committee.
Mm-hmm.
They worked with the police. They got a substation in their community. We met in that substation with members of their community action committee weekly. Four older folk. Some of these folks allowed the police to even set up in their homes. The civic association had a monthly meeting, and they'd get maybe 30, 40 people who would come to that. At the substation meetings, the police explained what their interdiction program was going to be with the folks in the community, and those folks in the community, not only did they feed us and everything else, but they also listened very closely. They gave their homes and their yards, so the police could do the things that they did. They targeted the most serious offenders. Then we prosecuted those cases. The citizenry, at the height of things, we drafted a community victim impact statement. And there were a number of citizens who came to court to say, this is what's happening in our community, particularly this person. So they were very good on the one hand at focusing on the people who created the most problem. They also helped the police kind of pull up on the people who were not as big an issue. So it's a very balanced approach. The community was deeply involved in influencing how the government actors behaved, how the police behaved, and how we behaved. We did this over a period of years. And for the time we did it, it was very successful. I think, politics changed and everything else, and there was just a change of administration alike, and they withdrew this. But it was an instance where you saw cooperation between citizens and between one government agency. You had the executive working through the police department, and you had the state's attorney working through us, and it was fulfilling and it was successful. And what I want to say, if you want to say, what do I want to say to young people who are interested in doing this? Good public service, commitment to sound public service, commitment to honest public service, commitment with a sense of integrity and trying to do the right thing. There's nothing better. So that would be my message to young folks.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been a great opportunity for us to get to know each other a little bit better, and certainly for the public to get to know you better. And thank you so much again for your service to this office, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. The very same. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.